There we go. Okay. These. Okay, we're ready to go. One attendee.
We'll wait, do our usual thing and wait a couple of minutes before there's anybody joining.
Okay,
Note I'm not in my usual place right now.
I noticed that.
And that's because they're putting new windows in my study, so they are give big cavities where the window used to be. But that's not the worst of it. I had to sort of move all my files and piles and stuff. And you know, I'm gonna have to survive for the next week or two without any you know, maybe in the state of disorganizationitis here.
I apologize for being in the shadow. I'm in the hotel room in Washington and I don't have.
Wow, yes. So I think we've got almost everybody here today. So why don't I call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. And I am going to call the roll. Reg Foster is here.
Eleanor Evans is here.
Ed Scheidler is here.
Penny Kirk is here.
Yes, and Janice informed me that she would not be able to come tonight this afternoon because her father, who's been in hospice, has taken a turn for the worse. And I said, well, of course, that comes first. So we have a quorum of 4 commissioners. This meeting has been is being held on a virtual basis as permitted for the rest of this month anyway, by the special order issued by Governor Baker. And a notice of this meeting was posted on March 17th, 2023. So I don't have any other announcements from the chair. This is a sort of single issue meeting or single purpose meeting, and that is to, you know, pick up the discussion where we left off last week with respect to the request that we received to, you know, withdraw our Linden Chambers funding application, CPA funding application for this cycle, and with the expectation that we can resubmit it at the next cycle on an off-cycle basis. And that would be oriented towards fall town meeting, which usually takes place the first week or so of October. So our resubmission would be going in, I would estimate, somewhere in the July timeframe when there's a lot more information known. I outlined the reasons why, from my point of view, why we are being asked to do this. And one of the reasons, one of the things we decided last Thursday is that we should allow for time for board members and anybody else to watch the YouTube videos of the CPC meeting at 5:30 on the 8th, and then the following FinCom meeting that happened at 7 o'clock on the 8th. I don't know. Hopefully everybody had a chance to do that. Is that a fair assumption?
I was there at one of them, the CPC.
You were at the 5 o'clock one? I'm not sure. I noticed that you had been there. So
No, I'm wrong. I'm naming the wrong meeting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were all at the public hearing last Wednesday, 6 days ago, but it was the meeting the week before that. Would it be worth my summarizing the 5 reasons again for everybody's benefit? First, the first one, this is in no particular order of importance, but I think all of them taken together has led us to be in this situation. First of all, they were concerned that we're not far enough along in the project in the design stage, certainly not where we were forecasting we would be a year ago when we successfully were awarded the $1.386 million for the design, first part of the design phase. And we honestly all thought, Cambridge Housing Authority people were telling us that it was reasonable to expect us, kick off that design phase in September 2022. And, at this point, we would be 6 months into it. And we would have moved through the conceptual design phase. We would have, be approving, and there would be some approving of the conceptual design that'd be done by the board. There'd be some sharing of that when the board thought it was, a good approach, because, just get the sense of the town, the planning board and other parts of the town, the neighbors. Of course, we haven't started to do that yet because we really didn't get going until January 2023. And it was not a fault of anybody, either on the NHA team or the CHA team. It unexpectedly, CD took 6 months longer to approve the RFS that we put out than they normally do. They were changing a form, and just it's one of those things that happen. The second reason is the CPC itself, and as a small part of the town, and the town in a larger sense, I think realized that they really were not in a good place to really fully evaluate giving the funds, the second round of funds to us, because it's a really complicated project. It has really complicated financing implications in terms of how is the $37 million going to happen. It also has the complexities of being related to the work we're going to be doing at Seabeds and Cook and High Rock to go through the repositioning applications, which will liberate a lot of money, not only just for our federally subsidized properties, but also free up subsidy units, up to 60 subsidy units, faircloth units is the technical term, as we've all learned, that can be transferred and redeployed to support the Linden Chamber project after it gets up and running. And that's all complicated. And by the time they got to the end of their normal process of evaluation, which relies completely on volunteer board members, and it wasn't like they didn't put a lot of hours into it, but they didn't, and it wasn't that we didn't turn around 30 pages of Q&A to them as we were trying to explain it to them, and we had several sessions with them. They didn't feel like they were fully on top of sort of their fiduciary duty to understand what's going on, make sure that we're doing the right thing without getting some additional expertise, which they don't have on board now, but they are now seeking as a result of this. So that was the second reason. The third reason is they did do a fair amount of analysis in understanding our funding situation for Linden Chambers, and also for the Seabeds and Cook project, which, by the way, I think there's very strong support for. And I fully expect that that's going to be approved by the CPC and the FinCon in the next couple of weeks and head off to town on the warrant. But the third reason was, given this, first two reasons, they sort of, they didn't discover it. It was just apparent, we're being very transparent, that we do have the 1.125 ARPA funds that we can tap into. Thank you very much, Representative Gerlich, for getting that for us, which would see us through. It's enough money to see us through all the way through the second phase of design, which is what we were asking for money from the CPC this time around. And that not only could we tap into those funds, but they understand that we actually have to obligate them and use them up by the end of calendar year 2024, which is basically the design phase. And if we don't use them up, then the ARPA funds revert. And we had made the argument that we were saving those ARPA funds to be part of the financing package. And that's, we were asking for the phase 2 design funding from the town this time around. And they said, well, it could be the other way around, right? You could, use the ARPA funds that you have in hand right now and get, a few months down the road where we have really concrete understanding of what the project is, and we have a chance to get these third-party consultants that they feel like they need. They also don't think they're organized town-wise to tackle a big CPC project like this. It hasn't happened for years, 15 years. Most of the CPC projects are done by town, departments and town committees, and they tend to be much smaller scale. Like the current other project this year is, $30,000 for redesign the tot lot at DeFazio Field. And, people can understand that. They can understand Rosemary Pool. They can understand, renovating a baseball field or buying open space. But this, again, they have this very complicated project that's really, they found themselves falling short, even though they did their best to try to evaluate all the moving parts. So what they did say that, if we're coming, as we said, if you're planning to come back to the fall town meeting anyway for the rest of the CPA funding that you need from the town that will make the numbers work for a phase 1 construction project, you can use up your ARPA funds to get through to the end of phase 2 design, and then you can ask us for a larger amount of money in the July through October cycle, whatever you need to fill that gap between the funding you can get from other third-party sources and the funding that you need from the town, which will fill that gap and make it possible to do the project, and certainly also demonstrate town skin in the game. So they saw it as the better approach from their point of view. And the last reason, just to pick out a very important item that we're working very intensively on as we speak is, if we had been on the original schedule by now, we would have had some visibility in how we are going to achieve the zoning needed for the Linden Chambers redevelopment, because right now it's in a area of town that, is zoned for, half of it's zoned for A1 apartment, and the other half of it's zoned for two family units, like the other High Rock units we did 10 or 15 years ago. And neither one of those zonings fits what we're intending to do, which is not only redevelop the whole 152 units that we already have there, which we have to do at a minimum, but maybe adding 50 or 100 plus more units while we're at it. So we're just beginning the discussions of the zoning with the planning board, with the planning director, Lee Newman. And in fact, even in the last few days that have passed since last Thursday, we've been having some very productive discussions where the zoning is coming into focus. And there are 2 or 3 very different options that have different pros and cons, and people are weighing in on that. And what's been moving forward is, I think, there's pretty clear that there's the zoning will, I think we'll find a way of doing it, but of course it hasn't really been done yet, and it hasn't been agreed to by the town and by ourselves. It is important, just to remind everybody, that we have the zoning in place by October 2023 at the latest, because DHCD controls the award of a lot of the funding, the tax credit funding and other funding that we need to actually do a phase 1 of the project, which, again, to refresh everybody's memory, is sort of in the $37 million range for the smaller version of what we might do. And it could be as much as 70 million if we do a somewhat bigger phase 1. So, and the smaller phase 1 is basically doing 32 of the Linden Street units, tearing those down and redeveloping 60, 65 replacement units. And the larger of the two potential phase ones is to tear down all 72 Linden Street apartments and replace them with 125 new apartments. And that's be about $70 million is being costed out right now. So the funding cycle, DHCD basically does one per year, and the preliminary applications need to go in the October-November timeframe. And then if they don't kick you out, get through the preliminary, then the actual competition takes place in the winter, in January and February. But one of the things is that you have to have, when you put in your preliminary application, is the zoning nailed down. You also have to have a sort of shovel-ready design of the project you're going to do and a lot of other things. But, zoning is a critical thing. And here we are at the end of March, and the perception on at least some people's part, if you listen to the two meetings on the 8th, out of which this all flowed, is that's a short time by municipal time standards to get it done. Any one of the 2 or 3 approaches that we're talking about doing. And so what happens if it doesn't get done? The whole thing slips anyway, which is another reason for them to consider waiting to see how we do, by July, August, September, and before they commit any further money. And that committing further money part, on one hand, every single person that has spoken with these concerns usually starts off or ends with I really support this project. This is long overdue. You got to believe me. It's not because I don't think this is going to happen and want it to happen, but this is just the way it looks to me. So, it didn't help us. This 6-month delay of DHCD didn't help us because we haven't actually submitted our first invoice to Needham to reimburse us for the A&E designer services work that started in January. Those bills, those first monthly invoices are just coming through towards the end of the month of February, and then we're turning around in the town, and they're kind of going into the town as of now. But as of now, you haven't even started spending the 1.386. So there's again, some comments that's like, aren't we kind of getting a horse a little bit ahead of the cart? We understand that it wasn't your fault that things got delayed, but let's not be in a rush, so that's kind of a summary. Now, the one other new piece of information that happened is Marianne Cooley, our chair of the select board, called me over the weekend, Saturday afternoon, and she was very concerned that we would misinterpret, and we meaning the Needham Housing Authority, the board, the staff, Cambridge Housing Authority, that is anything other, misinterpret these concerns that it seems are shared somewhat broadly with, we'd misinterpret it to mean that this strong support isn't there. And she actually, with her permission, I'm passing this along to you, that she says that there absolutely is strong support there. It kind of revealed some sort of diligent things, sort of putting together the infrastructure in the town, like who's going to pay attention to this project for the next 2 years or 3 years. I mean, it's like a new big school project or something. It's kind of very similar to that, but nobody owns it within town government, sort of the Kate Fitzpatrick part of the government here. And this is, again, not, ensuring me not intended to be taken as a criticism in any way of what the housing authority's done or what Cambridge Housing Authority has been doing, or the clarity and transparency that we've been doing everything. It's just, a realization that they've gone, for the next 36 months, there's going to be this big, humongous redevelopment project. And nobody who pays attention to it. Normally in the town, we have the PPBC. I think everybody knows who they are and what they do and the role they play. And that's part of the answer when it's some other town building project like a school or like the PSAB building when it was done, or Emery Grover that's being done now. And there's Hank Half, who's the town owner's project manager who over sort of serves in that kind of function for all the projects for the town, et cetera, et cetera. But they haven't really figured out what's the best approach, with respect to us and what we're doing. And it doesn't, not that they think we're doing anything wrong, but they do feel like, it's a matter of good government. They, if they're going to have, $4 to $6 million of town money on committed, and obviously this affects a large number of our town residents and voters, and which happen to be our residents too. The neighbors, are going to be very interested in what's going on in the immediate neighborhood. And we have the schools right across the street. This last really 6 weeks, it's been barely since we originally started to get into things in detail with the CPC liaison. So really towards the third week of January, leading up to the present, they want to use the time between now and July to kind of put in place the kind of town infrastructure and oversight that they think is the right thing to do with respect to this project. And again, she also was calling me because I haven't talked to her directly about the project. Last time I had any kind of discussion, was when we did our presentation to the select board on the 28th of February. But, she also called to confirm all the points that I just sort of outlined for you, but particularly she wanted to confirm the point that if we withdrew our application as it stands today and resubmitted, it wouldn't be the same application, it'd be a different application for construction funds for approval at fall town meeting, that this would not harm or interfere or get in the way of anything that needed to happen with the project. So she was also just double checking that observation or point, which had been relayed to her secondhand. So here we are. I will just say, obviously, after that first meeting on March 8th, and we really haven't had a chance to talk about it because of the timing of the way things unfolded. It made me kind of really discouraged, in the sense of saying, gosh, this is so hard and so forth and so on. But I have to honestly say, when I walk a mile in everybody else's shoes and I look at it, in terms of does it endanger what we're trying to do? And it's been such a heavy lift to get this to this point in time. It's been, those of you who've been around long enough for this know this is our third attempt to get this project going since I've been around here. Third time's supposedly the charm. But I realized that, I honestly can't say that it's going to get in our way. Lots of other things can possibly get in our way, but this decision won't, as long as we can come back into fall town meeting, which we were fully planning to do anyway. We were already signaling that right from day one. And it's within the parameters of the CPC process. They do have a allowance for an outer cycle process if timing considerations indicate that that's appropriate. There will be another major town project also going through this outer cycle process for this fall town meeting, and that's the Claxton Field project. Everybody know where Claxton Field is? Anybody not know where Claxton Field is? It's the field right across from the dump. Okay. And And it is it needs a major refurbishment, particularly because apparently in some distant time in the past, it was part of the whole dump infrastructure of Needham. And it was renovated. I see Steve nodding his head, so he probably knows the story, but like 30 years ago, it was turned into the playing fields that it is now. And they covered over all the nasty stuff that was in there, like with 6 or 9 inches of dirt. They are going to rehab the project field all over again. It's a very extremely high priority. It's a top priority for the Parks and Recreation, and everything was going fine for getting funding for this funding cycle. When they dug down, they did some test digging, and guess what? Isn't covered up as much as it needs to be. So they had to pull their application for this spring, just like us, because they couldn't come up with the right, they couldn't get their act together. Nobody's fault again, but come up with a good plan for dealing with all of it. But they absolutely have to deal with it with fall town meeting, because it now they can't use the field. And I think everybody does know, that we're very, very short on field space for Little League and all the other things, recreational stuff here. And so those fields are out of commission. So it is absolutely vital that fall town meeting approve the money that's needed for that project, so that they can start renovating as soon as possible in next March, and hopefully get them open sometime in the summer, so that they can be put back into use. So I digress on that just to say we're not the only ones out of cycle this particular year. The other example of out of cycle was when we had the seabeds ice dam problem in 2015. Remember that? It's sort of laughable to this year. I haven't had more than half an inch of snow all winter, but that was the winter that we had 100 inches of snow in Needham, ice dam problems. And there was a time when we thought we would have to go to CPA funding to get the money we needed to fix everything up. And Penny was around for that. It was a huge disaster for us. People had to move out of their apartments, and it was just terrible. Ultimately, we didn't have to use CPA funds, but there was a point when we were submitting applications and so forth. So it's my recommendation, in this context of this long odyssey that we've been on to try to get to this point, that we, do withdraw the application, and we vote to do that, not begrudgingly, but because that's the right thing to do, and we can include in the motion with the expectation that we will be resubmitting a application for the fall out of cycle CPA funding round. And I wouldn't make it more specific than that, but again, the context would probably be, based on what we know now, we would have a much better idea of what Margaret Moran calls the layer cake of financing, where everything's going to be coming from, or at least a better idea, 6 months better idea than we have right now. And we'll have a better idea of how much money needs to be asked for from Needham to sort of fill the gap. And it probably will be, again, for construction rather than for the design phase. And at the end, it'll still be the same amount of funding from Needham, which we're projecting again in the $4 to $5 million range for the smaller project, and the $6 to $6.5 million range for the larger phase 1 project. It's my recommendation. The Cheryl and Steve in the CHA team and we've discussed that, and I think the CHA team thinks that's probably the way to go as well. We don't want to have a 5-4 vote on the FinCom or on the on the CPC recommending this. We don't want the CPC to be recommending and the FinCom not recommending it. We want to go in there with sort of a unanimous support from everybody, all the important boards, which is those 2 boards and of course the select board, and hopefully it'll sail through town meeting unanimously, like our application did last spring. So the recommendation, I think, from the CHA team is that we go down this route as well. And it's, you know, we don't need to regard it as a setback. It's more a dress rehearsal. It's sort of been a learning experience for the town that really couldn't have been achieved in any other way. Questions, comments, Ed?
After reading the Q&A, the 30-page attachment that you sent out, I can
Yes.
certainly understand why some people would be uncomfortable and be confused. I found it very, very complicated myself, even with all the training and exposure that we've had already.
Hmm.
So it seems to me, since we're asking them for money, that we should be more than willing to accommodate them so that everybody on their side feels comfortable.
Mhm.
And I certainly agree with what you just said, that going into town meeting with full support as opposed to 5-4 votes is definitely going to be beneficial to us.
Mhm.
So I agree with you. I recommend that we go along with CPC's recommendation.
Mhm. Okay.
Get on our knees and pray and beg and plead that they're ready for the September for the fall town meeting.
And I don't think they're saying we have to come and beg and play. They just would look at it as what a team player, what a cooperative relationship would look like between us and the town. And
No,
they
I just meant that with such a
yeah.
humor. So
Yes, Penny.
Well, my first reaction when you described this at the last meeting was that I did think of it as a setback.
Mm-hmm.
But the way you've described it now, pointing out that it doesn't stop us from making the progress that we must make anyway. I've come to the realization that we really can't insist on anything else.
Yeah, we have to, I think, play the hand that we have, and we have to play it, you know, cleverly. And yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah. Now, we're not in a position of insisting here. We're in a position of working with a partner with the town here. Yes. Eleanor, do you have any thoughts?
Rich, you said that the ARPA funds have a deadline, have to be used by the end of 2024. Is that right?
Yeah, it'd have to be obligated. Yes.
Okay. I mean, so it does seem like it. And whereas the CPC funds, well, obviously, if we don't have them, there's no clock ticking on them. And then even when we do have them, is there a clock ticking? I mean, it's not in the same way that there is for the
Not in the
ARPA.
same way. They can impose a clock as a condition of the grant.
Yeah.
So that, you know, they say you have to use it within 2 years, or give them back to us, or ask us for an extension. So they normally do that. The grant agreements, you know, come with something like that from the town.
I mean, so we do want to make sure that we spend the ARPA
Right.
funds.
And then at some point, I forget who said this along the path, it said, it was sort of like, well, what happens if you do take another delay? But then you really do need to spend that ARPA money. You're going to be doing that anyway. You know, the biggest, right now, there's a million small things can cause delays, which when added up will cause a bigger delay. The biggest thing that I think anybody's identified is, again, not getting the zoning in place and not being able to hit that fall funding round. By the way, when I give you those dates, they're approximate because those are the dates last year. DHCD has not published the new dates for the upcoming 2024 funding round yet. So we're just assuming that they're sort of going to be the same as 2023. So yeah, we could miss. And then also, I just want to keep saying this now as we're getting closer. It's a competition. There's a lot of entities that submit applications in a limited amount of funds. And so we may not win the competition the first time that we submit for the 2024 round. And that's that's not unusual. And it's not held against you either. But, sometimes you have to submit 2 or 3 times before you actually have a project award in that DHCD funding round. Steve, do you have anything? You've worked in this world for longer than you can admit anymore in public
No,
here.
I think the strategy is sound. I think the information today is, as I would echo what Penny said, it felt like the other night that there was something underlying that was going on, and now it doesn't. And the Claxon Field where it is was the dump, but that's prior to 1960 something.
Oh,
It's converted in the 60s, so it's about 60 years ago. I played many a softball game on that field, but I understand that, methods today for capping off a landfill are much more sophisticated than they were then. So now that puts a little more perspective. They're looking to do something there, and that I think that keeps us in line. I appreciate what Maureen said to you. That's important. I'm sorry,
Marianne, yeah.
Marianne, and so I would go along with that. I think your motion is going to be good to do that. But I'm with Penny. I would have been ready to fight if it was something nefarious. But it sounds like it's all good.
Yes, I think so. Well, we don't have to prolong things then. I'm going to make a motion that the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners withdraws its CPA funding award FY 2024-01 for Linden Chambers pre-development funding for the second phase of the design, on the expectation that we will be resubmitting a new CPA funding award for the fall 2023 cycle. Not the same application, but a new funding application that provides the remaining town funding needed to be able to go forward with the project, TPA funding.
I second that.
Seconded by our treasurer, Ed Scheidler. Any further discussion? We'll go to a roll call vote. Reg Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler says aye.
Penny Kirk says aye.
And that's 4 aye votes. Janice Bennett can't be with us today, so motion carries 4-0. So thank you very much for the extra meeting right now. And everybody have a great
Reg, if I could.
next couple of weeks. Yes, sir.
I just noticed that Representative Garlick has joined our meeting. I don't know if you want to give her an opportunity. I don't know if she wants to speak or not, but if she has joined the audience attendees.
Representative Garlick, do you have something you want to say or address us, or please?
I'm bringing her up.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So no, I just wanted to join. I always want to be supportive to understand where we're at and where our next steps are. So thank you all for your good work.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your incredible help in getting this project moving forward. We really appreciate it. Okay, I think we're ready to do a motion to adjourn. Do we have one from somebody?
So
I
moved.
make a motion to adjourn.
I think Eleanor beat you to the punch there. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Mr. Scheidler. One more roll call vote. Reg Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
And Janice Bennett isn't with us today, so that carries. Everybody have a great day and see you next time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.